The average uptick in engagement on video on each of our channels was 250% up year over year.
Wow.
And overall video views were up almost 3,000%.
Wow.
So that right there really demonstrates the power of video and the sort of stuff that people are expecting to see and wanting to engage with on social media.
Hello and welcome to Unlocked, a show about growing your business through the power of video. My name is Dan West. I'm the owner and creative director at a production company called Blue Key Media. And today I'm joined by Mike Stephenson, the director of marketing and communications at the Minnesota Zoo. So thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Everything right with the last name, Dan. No big deal.
Really?
Stephenson. That's okay. And if you want to write it with a V, that's easier. I know, it looks like Stephenson.
We're just going to keep rolling because I think it's a charming intro. Stephenson. All right. Anyway, so tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, I've been in communications my entire career. I studied PR when I was in school and moved back to the Twin Cities from Iowa. I went to the University of Northern Iowa, grew up in the Twin Cities, and came back after school and started working for a nonprofit in the Twin Cities that dealt with domestic violence prevention and services. And was there for a number of years and then moved on to Alzheimer's, working for that cause, and then ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, most recently. And I've been now with the Minnesota Zoo as the director of marketing communications, as you mentioned, for about a year and a half. But my entire career has been in communications, and it's always been really important to me to do meaningful work, something that I felt passionate about, that I felt like was making a real difference in the world. And that's why my trajectory through nonprofits went the way that it did. And when I came to the zoo, it was really because I'm passionate about conservation, saving the planet and saving wildlife to the extent that I'm able to contribute. So I'm thrilled to be where I am now.
That's awesome. Cool. And throughout your time in communications and in the nonprofit space, how have you used video as a tool for your communications and outreach?
Great question, great subject for a podcast because, as you know, video has really moved to the forefront of communications for folks in my field. When I started 20 years ago, which feels like a long time, kind of dates myself, people were just thinking about how can we use video. Social media was very new, and Facebook was the only thing at that time, and there wasn't a lot of video happening on that channel. And it was this kind of far-off tool that's like, well, if you have unlimited resources or your own production outfit, maybe you can work in video. But of course, in the time since then, it has really taken off, and people are doing so much with iPhones, on the video front and on social media. But we've really learned the power of what that medium can do for your audiences, because particularly in the nonprofit and the fundraising space, it can be a little bit difficult and a little bit dry to try and explain via conversation, via face-to-face with your external audiences or your donor base, how your services or the work that you do really impact those you serve. And having video, even short form video, even if it's between 30 and 90 seconds, to demonstrate that impact means everything. Because if someone is either on the fence about donating or getting involved with the organization or volunteering, whatever it is, or even if they're already involved, kind of pushing them a step further in their involvement, that video showing them that compelling piece of content can be the difference.
And I assume in your previous roles, a lot of the focus is around people. Mm-hmm. And so storytelling around people is, definitely a very familiar path, but now you're storytelling about animals, right?
Yeah. So it's been new for me. I'm used to telling individual and family stories about the ways that different services have helped them throughout their journeys. And now you're right, we're very much on the animal side of things. And the zoo's mission of connecting people and animals in the natural world to save wildlife is what we're all about. So it's a combination.
Sure.
It's what can we do as human beings to preserve and protect the world around us, but telling those animal stories and educating the public about the animals themselves and their unique traits and why it's so important that we provide a sustainable future for them and keep threatened species protected has been amazing to be a part of that. And then also to share the stories of those that come to the zoo, that are involved with the zoo, that work at the zoo, and really benefit from what the zoo provides has been cool too, because you get to hear so many different perspectives of what it is about our mission that drives people.
Yeah. What are some of the various ways in which you're leveraging video at the Minnesota Zoo, whether it be through fundraising or through promotion of other events? So how does the zoo leverage video?
On the surface, it's pretty straightforward. If you watch any of our social media team does an amazing job. I have very little to do with it. But everyone wants to see our animals. And the cuter and cuddlier they are, the more engagement they get on our social channels. The zoo recently had 3 baby tiger cubs born, endangered armored tiger cubs. So not only is that an amazing thing for the species, that the birth and growth sustainment of that species, but also tiger cubs are really cute, and people want to see what they're up to. They want to know how they're growing and thriving. So you're going to see a lot of that kind of animal content. Just see the animals in their natural habitats and engaging with different elements that our amazing staff include in their habitats, engaging with each other. There's a lot of fun animal things that happen every day, and our team does a really nice job of curating that for our social channels. Beyond that, it's more along the lines of the work like you do at Blue Key, and that's capturing the longer form pieces about how people interact with or enjoy the zoo. And for the Minnesota Zoo Foundation, which is a separate entity, it's a 501c3 nonprofit that supports the Minnesota Zoo, video, as we were just alluding to, has been a really big tool in their fundraising, because they can show examples pretty easily of how the zoo's conservation work is saving wildlife, and how guests, donors, and volunteers are benefiting from the services provided by the zoo to immerse themselves in nature and connect with nature.
How have you seen using video to tell those stories on the fundraising side, the nonprofit side, be received by donors? And I know, so you and I created, a testimonial video on a zoo guest named Nick, who's been going to the zoo for decades. And if I remember right, you said that was one of the first people kind of focused stories you've maybe shared at one of the fundraising events. And maybe tell us how that type of content is received with an audience, and why that message was received well.
Yeah, it was kind of a new avenue for the zoo at our gala event specifically to do a person-centric story in that space. People are so used to hearing about our conservation work and having the focus be on the animals, but to really flip it and show the influence that we've had on Nick's life and Nick's family in providing accessibility and a safe space for their family at the Minnesota Zoo. We weren't necessarily sure how that'd be received, and our audience really appreciated seeing that. And again, that was a story that we couldn't convey through words. We couldn't have our fantastic MC stand up there or our auctioneer stand up there and explain why the zoo was impactful. It really had to be shown through something like video, and that's why it works so well. Many nonprofits, big and small, throughout the Twin Cities, and the Twin Cities is a very philanthropic community, so you find a lot of really wonderful causes here. They're used to doing these either black tie gala events or kind of larger formal fundraisers, and the folks that attend those are generally used to the formula. They're going to arrive, they're going to network a bit and see some of their friends, and they're going to be fed well. They're probably going to be given a glass of wine or 3 glasses of wine. And then at some point, an MC or an auctioneer is going to take the stage, and they're going to be asked for money. They know that's coming. They know that's why they were invited. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to give or that they're going to give beyond what they had, pre-planned coming into the night. So it's on the producer's job, it's on the storytellers to share a compelling enough piece of content to motivate them to give and to make that contribution. And if you can put together a piece of video in that kind of 5-minute window you have that moves them, that's going to show up in your fundraising dollars. That's going to be there at the end of the night in your result, and you'll know that that was the reason.
Cool. Do you use content like that in other ways outside of the fundraising walls, on more of just like a brand messaging, on more of like the public facing side of things?
For sure. A lot of that shows up on social media. So you can chop it up and do either smaller form video pieces on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. You can do audiogram kind of stuff where you'll overlay the audio over imagery, which I know you're familiar with. And then it's nice to have as content on the website too. We're always driving folks to our website to learn about the zoo and our animals and the events coming up there. And if we can further educate them or compel them with a piece of video like that, we want to make sure that's available, because we know not everyone is going to be able to or want to attend our fundraising events for various reasons. So if we can get that content in front of them in a different channel, we're going to do that, because maybe they're visiting the zoo website to purchase tickets for another event, and they see that and it's like, I'm going to give to the foundation because they're obviously doing meaningful work, and that's just a smart strategy.
Yeah. Have you noticed there being a shift at all in the way that your guests have wanted to consume messages, or, having to shift the different ways that, I guess you're communicating or marketing to them, and what has that shift been?
Yeah, the data bears that out, and I probably should have led with this. We work with a few different kind of data tracking tools across all of our channels that deliver pretty consistent reports on how various marketing pieces are performing. And my team, again, does a fantastic job of laying that all out and kind of measuring which tactics are performing best. And just last week, we were in a meeting where we were looking at it was around like 14 months of data, and the average uptick in engagement on video on each of our channels was 250% up year over year.
Wow.
And overall video views were up almost 3,000%.
Wow.
So that right there really demonstrates the power of video and the sort of stuff that people are expecting to see and wanting to engage with on social media. Particularly, a zoo audience is expecting to have a very audiovisual experience. They're not
Right.
coming to us for punny tweets or political rhetoric or anything like that. They want to see animals, and they want to see video of animals and hear animal sounds. So our audience is a little biased in that way.
Sure.
But even so, we put out a lot of non-video content, and to see how that stacks up against the video content is just blowing it away in terms of engagement and sharing and retweets and comments. It's all there in the data.
Wow. And is that something that, has the zoo done something differently with, I know COVID has, shifted the way that a lot of people communicate, and a lot of people are gravitating towards video to communicate. But has there been any sort of changes that the zoo's made over time that has led to that? Or all of a sudden you just saw in the last year or two just a huge increase in video, but you've been kind of keeping steady in what you've been doing?
Yeah, the pandemic definitely played a part, and I was not at the zoo at the start of it, but I saw this in my other organizations as well. When people weren't able to interact in person with your organization, they were looking for other ways to do that. And again, at the Minnesota Zoo, if you can't be there to see the animals and be up close with the animals, you need to find another way to do that. And so social media became a huge place to do that, and people wanted to check in on their favorite animals. And we have amazing guests that come to the zoo to see specific animals or specific groups of animals just about every day. And that's, one of the things we offer as a benefit of membership is you can come to the zoo every day, check in on your favorite animals, see how they're doing, say hello. And during the pandemic, during the period where the zoo had to be closed, unfortunately, to the public, our social media team was still out there capturing that content, filming the animals, and sharing it with the world, so that they knew the zoo is still here. The animals aren't going anywhere. They're going to be here when you come back. So that I think was very comforting for our audiences to know that we were still caring for the animals, that they were still doing well. And then that shift you talk about, I think really has just carried over because people started to expect more and I'll say better produced video content from the zoo during that time. It just became logical for us to continue churning that out. So when I started and we were looking at that data and seeing that that move towards the desire for more video content from our audience, I immediately wanted to upgrade our equipment. We invested in some new cameras and audio equipment and lighting on it. Not in line with the amazing stuff that you have here at Blue Key, but kind of that mid-level prosumer sort of stuff to better equip my team to capture that content. And that too has made a difference because our videos are looking better, they're sounding better, and people, whether or not they're looking for it, they notice, and they're going to be more likely to share or like or otherwise engage with those videos on social media.
Cool. Well, that's fascinating that you actually had the data to see that trend and that shift and were able to act on it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people aren't tracking data or tracking the right data. And so, they aren't necessarily knowing what communication efforts are producing. And
well, it's still new for a lot of organizations, and nonprofits are often so tightly staffed, and communications professionals in those realms need to wear many hats and do a lot of things every day. So sometimes data falls to the back burner for periods of time, but we're fortunate enough at the zoo to have a kind of larger, talented team that is able to take the time and look at that data and say, okay, what's really working, what's not. And again, I don't deserve any of that credit. It's those folks that are producing that content and putting it out there every day that are really driving that audience engagement.
Cool. So I know your role is a lot about strategy, overall messaging. And so when you decide that you want to do a video, that video is the right medium, first, how do you determine that video is the best medium for what you're telling? And then how do you go about crafting that message and kind of determining the story you're telling and how you communicate that?
I think at the zoo, to lean on some of my more recent experience, it's access. So we're well aware of what our guests are able to do when they're on the grounds, and they're able to see and interact with many things in nature that they wouldn't otherwise be able to. Big part of what the zoo in Minnesota and other zoos around the country and world offer, but still there are elements around the animals' care and engagement that you don't get to see, kind of behind the scenes stuff, animal health pieces that are involved with preventative health and other pieces, and being able to offer those kind of nuggets of access to our audience is really fun because people want to know more about our work in both conservation and animal care. And so we're always looking for those differentiating access points. Our veterinary team is amazing, and they do so much in preventative health for our animals. So just like human beings, they'll do dental checkups, blood work, nail trimming, and a lot that's hoof trimming for some of our larger animals. But that stuff is fascinating, and it's fun to see that veterinary team at work and do all the different things they do on any given day. And when we have a chance as a marketing and comms team to capture that sort of thing and provide a deeper look into that work for our audience, we always want to jump on it because it's like, this is something fun and different. We really think people want to learn about this, and then we'll see how it does on social, but oftentimes it plays really well. So when we make that determination, we're then in contact with our animal teams in health and welfare and animal care, making sure, first of all, that it's going to be safe for us to be there, that we're not going to be in the way, that we're not going to interrupt the rhythm of the animals or interfere in any way with what's going on. And as long as they're comfortable with it, they'll always tell us where to be and how long we can be there. But yeah, then we step into that space, and we'll usually capture as much content as we can, as you often will do, I'm sure, on your own video shoots, and then come back into post-production and say, all right, how much of this can we use, and what's the best kind of messaging we're putting out? We don't do a ton of live video or live streaming. The zoological space doesn't allow for a lot of that, So we usually have a moment to consider what sort of story are we trying to tell here, and what do we want to share with our audience when we put this video out.
And it seems like a lot of the content you're creating is more micro content, if you will, or shorter, pieces on a more consistent basis versus these massive productions that might take a lot of resources and time to produce.
True.
And I think that's a big fallacy a lot of people have is if you're doing video, it has to be the flashy, the really, nice, high production value. But I mean, most of the time, even just a consistent, rhythm of content that you can create with your phone or, it doesn't have to be glamorous as long as you're engaging with that audience. I mean, you're accomplishing a lot with that.
That's very true, and I didn't mention earlier the obvious piece there that you just said. What we can do with our phones now. Phone cameras have improved, exponentially over the last even 6 years. So even a novice like me can pull out their phone and capture compelling content, and the phone's going to do so much of the work for you. And for our animal care staff and veterinary staff, they're always in the moment and doing what they need to do to care for the animals, and they don't always have time to call their comms team and say, hey, we're doing something interesting. Why don't you grab the cameras and come on down? They don't have time for that, understandably. So many times a vet tech or an assistant keeper or a zoologist will be there with a phone, and they'll capture that knowing that it may be something we want to use. And we have ways for them, channels for them to submit that video to for us to review and talk through with them and say, do we think this will play well? Is this something we can show? So that's been really great for them to be able to capture their own content. And it's also given them kind of more ownership over it and brought them closer to it and some pride as well to say, like, this is a way for us to demonstrate the important work that we do and share it with the world, and that they can do that on their phone, that they don't necessarily need us there with a big fancy camera. That means a lot. Now, the flip side of it is we're capable of that. We can do that. But when there are times when we really need that extra layer of polish, when we need, the best possible lighting and sound and video that's going to be expertly produced and edited, we have to call in professionals, folks that are in your field, because there are limitations. And we try and be pretty self-aware about that to say, we can do some things, but if we need this really buttoned up piece of content for a fundraising event or a longer form piece that we're going to share in our weekly newsletter, it's probably best for us to lean on professionals because we know this is all that you do, and you're going to capture it in a way that will best suit our audience. So it's just figuring out when those moments are and when to call in the pros.
Yeah. Any tips that you've maybe learned throughout your career as you've done video, and maybe some of those larger, more polished video when it is time to invest on, how to best plan for them or, things that people can do to have a more impactful video or a video that results in more impact for, their organization?
Yeah, well, the main thing for me, the main learning as I came up through my career is don't try to do it all yourself. It's tough. If you want a polished product in the end, no matter how skilled you are with a camera or as an interviewer or as a sound technician, trying to combine all those things into one person and do them all at once, it's a really tricky thing to do, and your results aren't usually going to be great. At least when I was doing it. So again, at least having enough folks on your team to handle those various elements, even if it's just for an eye on the lens. If you as a content creator are doing an interview or interacting with your subject, to have someone else, keeping an eye on the camera and keeping an eye on the audio levels, that goes a really long way. And then again, knowing what your limits are and when to say, we probably can't handle this. Let's call in someone like a Blue Key to come in and tackle this for us, because better than anyone, it takes a team to really pull this off in a way that's going to produce high-level results.
Yeah, definitely. What's a memorable video you've created over the course of your career that, when you think about it, it really had meaningful results? Whether it it just was received super well, or was raised a lot of money, or, maybe brought in a lot of traffic, whatever kind of that goal was, it just performed really well.
Yeah, I think for me, the most meaningful examples were when I was working for causal organizations like Alzheimer's and ALS, in sharing the stories of people living with terminal illness, knowing that their time was going to be limited and that they were using a portion of that time to share their story and try and make a difference so that those coming behind them may not have to have a similar fate. That was always extremely meaningful for me, and I was in awe of people that were willing to share those stories and make that kind of difference. I'll never get past that. I think it was a really, really amazing thing to see happen. At the Minnesota Zoo, again, I love the animal content. It's fun. I love the conservation content because zoos like ours do so much important conservation work around the world, not just where they are. I mean, the Minnesota Zoo is involved in projects on several different continents. But when we have a chance to tell people stories and hear from them about why they love the zoo and why they come to the zoo and are part of our work, that just really hits home for me. And there was a video that Blue Key was involved in that was helping to tell the story of the zoo and see the zoo through the eyes of a child. And being a part of that production and hearing from those kids, many of them younger than 10, younger than 8, about what they loved about the Minnesota Zoo and animals and the natural world, was just so fun because that age, obviously, kids can really articulate exactly what it is that they love and what their favorite animal is. And for our audiences to see that and be reminded of a time when they had that kind of innocence and that kind of connection to nature, pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, that was a really fun video, and I remember our team just like imagining how do we tell that story through the eyes of the child. I just loved the concept, and it turned out to be a really great piece. How did your team come up with this is the direction we should go? Because you could have gone in other directions. You could have gone in more traditional, like, hey, here's the conservation work we're doing, or look at all the great things that we've done at the zoo. But to take it from that perspective, how did your team kind of get to that idea and come up with more of that novel approach?
For us, I think it was really about having this be the first in-person Beastly Bash Gala event that we were going to do since the pandemic began, wanting to welcome our audience back to the zoo space for that event, understanding that many of them had missed some of the things that they were getting from the zoo. It was a way for us to remind them all the things that we love about zoos. And as I was saying, kids tell that story so well. And so much of the zoo is for children. We really want to show that next generation what it means to preserve and protect wildlife and the world around us. So I think hearing that from kids and being able to relate to that time in your past, I think it really made something click for folks to hear that and think, oh yeah, that's why we're doing what we do.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think that speaks to really the power of video, especially from a nonprofit storytelling side of being able to really share a unique perspective and change perspective and look at things in a slightly different way and make your viewers think about things in a slightly different way. It might not be necessarily a novel message at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it was the zoo is important and we need to conserve it and protect it, but being able to inject that perspective that the average person isn't thinking about or getting, I think there's some cool there's power in that. And same with Nick's story and being able to share the perspective of a guest who has developmental challenges and how the zoo has been able to impact his life and share the perspective of that. And I think that's the benefit of video and so many other organizations is being able to show that unique perspective. And that's where people, I think, need to lean into then, rather than going a traditional, route of we're going to talk about our organization and what we do, but figuring out how do we share the unique perspective that we help bring to the world.
Yeah, so what impact are we making? What are we really delivering through the services we offer? And you need to hear that from the people you serve. That can't be told to you by a CEO or a marketing director. That has to come from the people that are experiencing it. No better way to do that than through video and hearing from the source themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other things that you've learned over your time with video?
Again, I'll reiterate that I'm not great at it. I have learned that there are many more talented professionals out there, and I think that's why we're at such a great time in history to, one, have technology be so much more accessible so that we can capture the kind of quick and easy stuff as it happens in front of us, because you don't always know, particularly in a zoo setting, when something fun and exciting is going to happen, so you want to be able to do it quickly if you need to. But then having options and production companies like Blue Key out there to call and say, we have an idea that we're not sure we're able to execute on. Let's bring you in and make sure we're doing it right. So, again, I think I encourage people to explore and do what they can. There are a lot of tools available to them in pre and post production that are fun to learn and mess around with, and just know your limitations. Call them the big guns when you gotta.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, any fun fall events that are coming up that people can look forward to at the zoo?
Always. I will always take an opportunity to plug what we have happening at the zoo. I mean, this is such a fun time of year to have so many families and young folks at the zoo experiencing the daytime zoo and all that we have to offer. But beyond that, there are a lot of events that the zoo puts on throughout the calendar year. And right now we are looking forward to, as we wrap up Llama Trek. I think you guys were out there for Llama Trek when it was going on, where you can walk amongst the llamas and feed them.
Yeah.
That's a fun thing. That goes through Labor Day. But we're opening up this fall. We're doing kind of a grand preview of a dinosaur exhibit that we're putting in with very large animatronic dinosaurs that move and make noise, and we're putting them in this very kind of unique setting, and it's going to be a play space as well, so kids can explore that and have nature play and see dinosaurs. And as you know, children love dinosaurs. So we're going to open that around Labor Day as like a preview for when that fully opens next spring. And then the Jack-O-Lantern Spectacular, which is our big fall event. 5,000 carved pumpkins, many of them done in these intricate artistic representations. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to be a part of that.
I haven't, no.
Y'all have to come out this year. It's an amazing event. We run it through all of October into the first week in November, and it's such a fun and family-friendly, all ages event, really. I mean, before I worked at the zoo, and I had a friend of mine, and get tickets, and was like, "You got to come to this pumpkin thing." And I was like, I've seen carved pumpkins. Then you get out there, and it's like, it is mind-blowing, the artistic ability of these folks, and that's always a fun one. We know that that's going to be well attended, and we encourage folks to get tickets at mnzoo.org.
And that's what sold you on working at the zoo?
Well, it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt, that's for sure. I knew I'd be closer to that. I'd have more access to that. So tickets will be on sale for that around Labor Day, too. We'll be in touch on that at mnzoo.org. And then Wild Nights. We're doing this. We were just talking about this before we started recording. We're doing this really fun festival series this summer, every other Thursday, where it's a 21-plus event. So adults can come out, enjoy food trucks, adult beverages. The entire zoo is open, so they get to experience our animals if they're unable to do that during the day. And then we have music on 3 stages, and we have some really fun acts, talented acts, both locally and nationally, that are coming in for these events and performing. So we have a different kind of theme every other week. So this Thursday, the one coming up is around blues and jazz and salsa. And then the last event on August 18th will be rock themed. And the response to that has been wonderful. People are excited to have music back in the zoo and have these kind of adult-centric evening events. So those are happening too. And again, you can find tickets for all of these and daytime zoo admission at mnzoo.org.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. It sounds like there's a lot of fun things, from dancing to pumpkins to Jurassic Park. I hope that's what it feels like.
Yeah, it is. I was just touring it the other day, and it's like, you see them kind of piecing the dinos together, and then you stand next to one. It's like this 15-foot Allosaurus, or I'm probably saying the name wrong, but something like that. And it's like, whoa. And they've done a really great job of kind of restoring them and bringing them to life. And it's a ton of fun. I think kids are really going to dig it.
Awesome. Thank you again, Mike, for coming on the show and sharing your perspective on video and how you've used it. Really appreciate it. Also, just a quick plug for Blue Key Media. If you're not following us already on social media, you can find us on Instagram, on LinkedIn, at Blue Key Media. And of course, subscribe to the podcast. So thanks again, Mike.
Thank you. Thanks. It's great to be here.